Did you know that you've actually been holding and bearing a curse all your life? You might be. You might be. Have you ever wondered if you're cursed? Hi, guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Good afternoon, good morning, good day, good evening to you, wherever you're listening from, whichever time zone you're in, and welcome back to this very millennial Indian discussion. So, just wanted to ask you guys a question. Did you know that you've actually been holding and bearing a curse all your life? You might be. You might be. Have you ever wondered if you're cursed? Well, it's not that complicated. Let's make it a little simpler for you. So, in my previous video, when I was talking about a lot of things that our generation goes through, I mentioned this word in the passing called the generational curse. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so many of you must be wondering what on earth is a generational curse? Like, it's not like some old sage or Rishi Muni said, "Ha, आप श्रापित हो." No, it's actually way more common than that. A generational curse is a pattern of negative behavior that is passed on from generation to generation, mostly subconsciously done. So, before we get into the topic, I'd just like to tell you that it's not just our generation that bears these curses and these negative emotions or negative patterns of behavior. Generational curses have been passed down in the world from each generation to the next. So, it's not just you and your parents, it's your grandparents and their parents and their parents, and so on. So remember that we are living in an ever changing world, and everything around us is very, very different from how it used to be maybe back in the early 19th century or in the 1950s or even in the 1970s or even in the early 2000s. So the times have changed, but we often hold on to a lot of these ideas or behavioral patterns that we have seen in the past being exercised on us, or that have been exercised on generations before us. And now you're the odd one out, right? Everyone expects you to wear yellow, but you're wearing blue. So, with this very simple example, what I'm trying to explain to you is that there are patterns that our families have repeated every generation without skipping any most of the time, that have still stayed with us and continue on into the next generation unless we change the way we think a little bit. So, we'll talk about some examples of such generational curses and how they negatively impact us, how some generational curses have changed, and how you can be the one to take control into your hands and stop this curse. Very basic example of a generational curse. Now, the word curse is very subjective, but it's just the colloquial way of explaining this behavior, so I'm using it as it is replicating your parents' life, right? There's nothing wrong with it. Um, your parents might have a great life or a not so great life, but it's the idea of completely replicating it as it is. As I was discussing in the previous video, we are often put into the society after our education. We are expected to go get a high paying job or to go do an MBA, or to basically pursue our career and make good money, and like that's the endless cycle or the loop of life. But what we need to understand is it's a mindset, okay? It's not just a mindset that you were born with. As children who are brought up with animals around them often grow up to not be afraid of animals. At the same time, kids who have not seen, say for example, a dog their whole life are often tend to be afraid when they go out on the road and they see a street dog for the first time. So this is pretty much how your stimuli is created when you're a child, right? So generational causes are just things that are considered to be the norm or normal by previous generations, and they try to pass it off into ours as well. So just to give you a few examples of what might be a generational curse, not to sound too preachy, is replicating your parents' behavior. So, for example, if you've seen the women in your household wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning, finish their pujas or their worship and go out to pick the flowers, come back and make tea for the family, wait for everyone to wake up, make their breakfast, make sure everything's ready, send them off, then start working on lunch. You see this behavior, and often, if you don't do anything about it, you are expected to repeat the same cycle or recreate this in your own life. Now, working too hard is also a generational curse. I'm sure all of you have heard the story that parents often say, even grandparents often say, just हमारे टाइम में हम साइकिल से जाते थे और हमको 10 किलोमीटर दूर जाना पड़ता था স্কুল जाने के लिए मुझे মানে আমাকে 7 সমুদ্র 13 নদী পার করে যেতে হতো বিদ্যালয়ে পড়ার জন্য you don't really relate to that much, do you? So they often believe that our lives are much, much easier than their lives, right? Which is not always true. I mean, we have our own set of problems and we have our own set of, connectivity issues, may I say. And we have our own little syllabus which keeps growing every year. So this is a generational curse of thinking um, that we have it easy, right? So dismissing the problem of our generation or next generations by saying that just get over it, or you have no idea how difficult it is for me, I've made your life so easy for you. These are things that we all have faced perhaps in our life. This is a generational curse, okay? The only way to understand it better is that uh, the feeling that it comes out of in these adults is, if I had to experience it, others should too, right? If I felt the pain of rejection, others should too. If I fell into a ditch, others should too. So you see the logic slowly removing itself from that sentence. If there is a bus available that takes me from my house to my school, I will take it. If my parents can afford to put me in a carpool or send me by car, I will take it. If I can piggyback with a friend and, you know, go with her to school or to college or whatever, I will take it. It's the convenience that has come out of times and the growth of the previous generations. There is nothing wrong in owning your privilege, right? Like, when I say that, I mean that you have to accept, yes, I'm privileged, but you also have to, take advantage of it, right? Like, you can't show struggle just because people have struggled in the past. Your struggle is your own. We go through a lot of different struggles that our parents hadn't even heard of. Like, they didn't have TikTok and Instagram telling them that this is what they should look like. They didn't have 2000 fashion brands of fast moving fashion, which is absolutely unsustainable, telling them that, yeah, this is how you should dress, this is what a model looks like. They didn't have a lot of problems that we face today. So, automatically, we should understand that we might not have the same problems that they face yesterday. So this is a generational curse, and our senior generations often have uh, the tendency to say that it's not that big a problem and you should just dismiss it. So mental health often goes uncharted, like absolutely undiscussed in these situations. If you do feel like you're having a hard time and you try to tell them that there are too many things going on, you might not often get a response. But your responsibility as the next generation, which is about to take the reins of power um, onto this world and onto this country, which is really heading fast, we need to understand that we can't repeat these behaviors over and over again. And the curse must end with you, right? You're the hero of this movie, you're the heroine of this movie, and you will break this curse, right? So, the next situation that we often hear is that people feel like our generation is overtly sensitive, right? We are so touchy. There's this whole joke about how when our parents were children, there'd be the third prize, the second prize, and the first prize. But now everybody gets a consolation prize. And that's because our generation is so sensitive. But it's just that it's from the past trauma that people have faced in their lives. And it's not something that we want to dismiss, right? We can't dismiss the history or the socio political economic situation that the previous generations have gone through. But this is all about self awareness and self acceptance that my situation is a little different. I don't exactly walk the same path as you do. I don't walk in your shoes. My shoes are a little different. Maybe they're heels, maybe they're platforms, maybe they're sneakers. So that's the perspective change that is really needed in these things. Um, Another thing, I'll give you a very Indian example. Uh, and I think these examples will help you understand the concept of a generational curse and how to break it. So, firstly, there's a big connotation that, see, you've heard a lot of Indian families say that, oh, women in our family, they don't need to work. Does that mean that your education is going to go wasted? Does that mean that you are also going to be a homemaker or making someone else's home? That's in your hand, right? So that's the generational curse that you need to question. Nobody's telling you to be a rebel. We're just asking you to question the rules that are set in front of you, because rules change, people change, rules change too. Another very, very common generational curse that I feel uh, was something related to what I was discussing yesterday, which is changing perspectives, which is that, oh, আমাদের ফ্যামিলিতে সবাই সবসময় সার্ভিস করেছে, और हमारे फैमिली में कोई बिजनेस नहीं करता है. दैट डजंट मीन दैट यू कांट स्टार्ट इट. कोई नहीं करता है इसका मतलब तो ये नहीं कि कोई नहीं कर सकता है, राइट? शाहरुख खान डजंट कम फ्रॉम अ फैमिली ऑफ एक्टर्स. They had nothing to do with the entertainment industry even remotely, but he's literally the biggest actor, possibly one of the most popular actors in the world right now. If he gave into his generational curse of being a jobber, we wouldn't have the nation's biggest star. We wouldn't have a Pathan. Okay, so just remember to question these things, right? Another big generational curse that we often face is that you know you are told that everyone in our family has, suppose you want to do, you want to get a university education, but you have people telling you that, oh, nobody in our family has studied more than HS or more than college. How can you want to get a master's degree? How can you want to do a PhD? You can. There is scope and opportunity. There are 2000 times the educational institutions and scholarships that exist today that didn't before. So open yourself up to the possibilities, do your research, be aware of yourself, of your destructive patterns, and educate yourself in your family history. Know more about your generational curses, because the problem with generational curses is that they are so internalized that we often don't even realize that we have them, right? So the first step is to go and dig and ask your parents their history, ask your grandparents where they came from, ask your great grandparents if you have access to them, ask for stories about their lives. So, and be objective, right? These are their lives. You and I make mistakes every day. So there's nothing that had stopped our seniors from making those mistakes in the first place. But what can we do? We can learn from those mistakes. We don't want to go about repeating them again, right? So one more very important thing is that often when we have a generation of senior adults who've not had their dreams come true, right? Suppose somebody's parents wanted to be a CA, or be a professor in chemistry at IIT, and they never got to live that dream. Maybe that's your dream as well. But you have to ask yourself, is it a dream that you chose, or is it someone else's dream that's coming out or being fulfilled through you? It's a very complicated feeling, but it's not something to blame the adults, the bigger adults for, because this is what they subconsciously do, right? They don't consciously want to give you these behavioral traits, but you need to step back, be objective, and ask yourself, is it my dream to be a professor at IIT, or is it my father's dream that I'm a professor at IIT? If you have the same dream, that's great, but you might be really bad at chemistry, and then don't blame yourself for being bad at chemistry while your father's brilliant at chemistry. We're all really good at different things. Your father might not really be good at sports, but you might be the upcoming, champion batsman for the Indian cricket team. So just keep your mind open and remember that your dreams are your own, And there's nothing wrong in having independent thoughts and independent dreams that are all about you. But there's a very, very high possibility that the trauma your parents and your grandparents have faced is much, much worse than the trauma you have faced. Because a lot of our previous generations have broken these curses. Imagine they didn't even have the internet. We were practically born into a world by the time we were teenagers. We had cell phones, we had dial up connections, we had BSNL. They didn't. So they have already broken a lot of curses to reach where they are today and leave the world a better place than you found it. That's all our responsibility, not just for the environment, but also at home, right? So, this very, very important thing is that you should not be afraid to reach out for help, whether it's to your cousins, older ones who have gone through the same problem because you have similar family backgrounds, they might be able to relate to you, or if it's to a therapist, because in today's day and age, some of these problems are very deep rooted, or if you're in school, to your teachers, if they see that you're really good at a subject, but your parents have been inclining you to go towards something completely different. Suppose you're really good at history and arts and you want to be a journalist, and but your parents have told you that they feel like their child should study science and become an engineer and go on to work for Tesla. So you need to be able to tell your teachers to have that conversation, right, or your friends to have that conversation, or learn how to deal with these conversations and be really good, or try very hard, work very hard to be really good at what you believe you're good at. So you need to be the best, at least try to be the best at what you're doing, because that's the only way that you can prove yourself, because nobody's going to let you take the pie for free. Okay, we're paying through our efforts, we're paying through our hard work, and just remember that they have gone through a lot of worse trauma than you. So just be a little nice when you get the chance, because a little bit of niceness goes a very long way. Overcoming generational curses. So a lot of people are of the opinion that the only way to break a generational curse is to not bring a next generation into the world. If you don't have kids, you can't ruin their lives. Yeah, I mean, that's sure. To each their own. That's a long term solution. That's putting a stop on the solution. A lot of people feel that they don't want to repeat these patterns of behavior and want to be very protective of their children when they have children, which is great. But you can't heal your trauma using other people's lives. That's repeating a pattern. So you need to heal your own trauma. It's the trauma or triggers that you have gone through. You can't put your dreams on the next generation. That's what's happened in the past, and that's not been very helpful for either party. So let's try to do what we can within ourselves and in our own ecosystem before we even think about the next generation, because ultimately you're creating a world that other people are going to be taking forward with or without you, to know what's wrong so that you can correct it. And this is a lot of deep thinking. This is a lot of leaving the world out there and spending a lot of time with your own self and understanding that, hey, maybe this could be done differently. It's just about reflecting. There could be absolutely nothing wrong as well, but it's your responsibility to think it through, because a lot of these things have become so at one with our characters. People are often sexist without knowing it, right? A lot of people have subconsciously fed men more than women, or have subconsciously educated men and not educated women, or have expected people to continue doing arranged marriages even though it's leading to a lot of future problems or breaking somebody's heart in the process. So these are things that need to be changed. So I'll give you my favorite example from one of my favorite movies and characters of all time, which is Spider-Man. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, the original, the OG. And if you remember, Spider-Man's favorite, Peter Parker's bestest friend was none other than Harry Osborn, okay, played by James Franco. And he was the son of a great scientist, Norman Osborn, who actually led Oscorp in this fictional Marvel universe. What did he do? So, he was best friends with Spider Man. He didn't know that Peter Parker was Spider Man. And his generational curse was that The genius of Norman Osborn reflected into split personality disorder, which made him Green Goblin as well as Norman Osborn. So, the generation curse that Harry was born with, which he didn't know of, was that one day he would have to become a supervillain, which is the Green Goblin. But he really tried to break this curse. So, if you move on and you watch all three films, you'll understand that he knew better, he chose better, and he subconsciously decided to change for the better, to help Spider Man, even losing his own life in the way. Why? Because the responsibility of breaking a pattern or breaking a curse lies in our hands. We cannot afford to repeat the same mistakes that have happened in the past, because if we are sensitive, our next generation is going to be more sensitive. If we have distractions and negativity in our life, I'm assuming that though things will get better, things will also get a lot worse before they start to get better. So, the most important thing that you should take away from this video, and I really want to tell you, is that accepting generational curses is one part, accepting the responsibility of not continuing the curse is another. So, till next time, I hope I've left you with a lot to think about. Remember, your dreams are your own, and it's your responsibility to work really hard towards making them come true. So, till next time, remember, everyone's unique in a weird way, and everyone is weird in a unique way. Thanks. See you soon.